Warm welcome, viewers. You're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Chaudhary. We are counting down to the Prime Minister's address, the first ever since Operation Sindoor. And now that we're in ceasefire, we will hear the Prime Minister speak at 8 p.m. Lots of questions there swirling. The fog of war, if one can say, has lifted. We're going to continue to get you the latest that's coming in. But we are counting down to the big Prime Minister's address at 8 p.m. sharp. All right, we have the latest news break that is coming in. The Prime Minister today, of course, after a series of meetings, he's met the Defence Minister, he's met the NSA, he's met the Tri-Chiefs, and right after that, today, for the first time ever since Operation Sindoor, Prime Minister Modi will address the nation at sharp 8 p.m. Prime Minister's first address post-Operation Sindoor. Like I pointed out earlier, the Prime Minister had chaired key meetings at his residence today. The NSS, CDS, Tri-Service Chiefs all attended the meeting. Raksha Mantri, External Affairs Minister, also attended this key meeting. We've already heard this afternoon the DGMO press briefing where, they detail for India in terms of the targets that India hit. But all eyes, viewers, will be on the Prime Minister's address. As a responsible nation, the Prime Minister had been following, studying all developments. He was kept abreast by the CDS, by the NSA, by the Defence Minister, even the Tri-Chiefs. Unlike Pakistan's Prime Minister, trigger-happy, giving out reactions in Parliament, outside, our Prime Minister has been silent. And now that the ceasefire has been announced and is finally being followed, the Prime Minister will speak to the nation today on what has been exemplary, stunning show by the Indian Armed Forces. I want to bring in my colleague Sandeep Unithan, senior journalist. But before I do that, I want to quickly cut across to my colleague Piyush. Piyush, few can forget, right before Operation Sindoor, Prime Minister's public meet in Bihar, where he vowed retribution, saying that exemplary action, never seen before action would be taken. More so later on, har goli ka jawab gola hoga. And today, for the first time ever since Operation Sindoor, the Prime Minister will address the nation. Since the course of the day, Piyush, elucidate on that. He's been briefed by the External Affairs Minister, by the Defence Minister, the CDS, you've had the NSA and the Tri-Chiefs.
Well, absolutely, Preeti. In the last more than 2 weeks, we have seen the Prime Minister chairing a series of meetings. And today, after the successful Operation Sindoor, he is going to address the nation for the very first time. And during his address, most likely, the Prime Minister is going to talk about the successful Operation Sindoor, the lesson which we have taught to Pakistan, and also about the developments those have taken place in the last more than 2 weeks since Pahalgam terror attack. You would remember, Preeti, that Prime Minister had cut short his Saudi Arabia visit, and after he landed in Delhi, he was briefed immediately by NSA, Ajit Doval, and Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. And then on the very next day, he had held a Cabinet Committee on Security meeting in which series of diplomatic actions were taken against Pakistan. After that, Prime Minister also chaired a meeting with Tri-Services Chiefs in which NSA Doval and S. Jaishankar were also present. And at the time, free hand was given to security forces to decide on more timing and targets to reply back to Pakistan on the terror attack which it carried out against the Indian soil. And after all these meetings, coordinated meetings, Prime Minister for the first time is going to address the nation. Remember that today in the morning also he held a meeting with NSA Ajit Doval in which S. Jaishankar, Foreign Affairs Minister, the Defence Minister, also Tri-Services Chiefs. Along with them, what sources have confirmed to us that top Indian government officials were also present. And soon after that, Prime Minister also held another meeting with NSA Doval and Air Force Chief Air Marshal A.P. Singh. So after holding multiple meetings, the Prime Minister is now going to address a nation. In 1 hour from now, we will see that address will begin. Prime Minister is most likely going to focus on the kind of actions those have been taken against Pakistan. Also, the developments
by the Indian Armed Forces. We've been a responsible nation, viewers, and one must really touch on it. because away from the military political rhetoric which went on in propaganda where Pakistan was concerned, where nearly on a daily level we heard the Pakistan Prime Minister speak, as was our military response, so was our political response back home, measured, tempered. The Prime Minister was briefed every day, day and night. He was following the developments and has chosen to speak now that we're in ceasefire. It's been exemplary how our armed forces have performed. And I want to also bring in our managing editor, Gaurav Sawant, who's joining me. But Sandeep, I want to bring you in on this. Sandeep, it's often said that, the armed forces are the forward march of the political will of a country. And the last 6 days have seen exemplary, never seen before action.
Absolutely, Preeti. In fact, Operation Sindoor is politico-military signaling of the highest order. It's one of the most significant military operations embarked upon by the Republic of India since independence. Now, it's really significant what Prime Minister Modi has authorized the armed forces to do. He's given them full operational liberty to tackle these targets. First, the terror infrastructure, and then finally, the military infrastructure. So what we've seen with the DGMO's briefing yesterday and today, Preeti, is we saw the military aspect of the operations. We saw how we've conducted unprecedented airstrikes against Pakistan's terror infrastructure, killing over 100 terrorists, 9 strikes against the terror infrastructure. And then later, once we were provoked, once Pakistan began attacking our airfields and our cities and our civilian population, India authorized one of the largest airstrikes by the Indian Air Force. In fact, this is unprecedented in the history of independent India. The Indian Air Force has never undertaken operations that are so complex. 11 airfields, targets across the length and breadth of Pakistan, struck within 30 minutes. We heard all of that. We saw this fantastic briefing by the DGMOs of the 3 services on one platform, indicating that terrorism was now a tri-services issue, that we are not going to be deterred by nuclear weapons of the adversary in the neighborhood. And while that military message came across yesterday, what we are likely to see from the Prime Minister today, Preeti, is the political messaging. What was the political signal that the Prime Minister was sending out to Pakistan, which is, it's been a thorn in India's flesh for decades now, especially since 1998, especially since the nuclearization of the subcontinent post the Pokhran tests of 1998, when we went nuclear on the 11th of May, and the Pakistanis did a few days later, and then we had a nuclearized environment in which Pakistan used that nuclear shield to attack us with terrorist attacks across the length and breadth of India. And I think that has now come to an end. We have declared that enough is enough. Terror attacks against India will be considered an act of war. And we have, through the 3-phase Operation Sindoor operations, demonstrated to Pakistan that terrorism can no longer be a low-cost option. There will be high costs imposed on you for that. Your military infrastructure will be taken out. Your terrorists are anyway in our crosshairs. They have been struck successfully. And your nuclear weapons do not deter us from protecting our citizens by taking preventive, protective measures.
Well, you're bang on, Sandeep. I want to bring in Gaurav Sawant as well into this conversation, because viewers, political messaging is also very important. But like a responsible nation, we've waited for military action to conclude. Till now, it's only the Indian Armed Forces and the External Affairs Ministry that have briefed the nation and the world. Political messaging will come in now. For the first time, the Prime Minister will address the nation on what an exemplary show by our armed forces. And, Gaurav, I want to bring you in on this, because it's interesting on how the last couple of, the last 6 days have gone. While we've seen massive political Pakistan propaganda, we've seen a lot of political military rhetoric coming in from Pakistan, with practically on a daily level the Pakistan Prime Minister addressing their country, many would suggest with a fair amount of lies. We've been very, very measured and tempered in our response. Till now, the Prime Minister hasn't addressed the nation, other than that one rally in the beginning, or a public meeting in Bihar, where he said exemplary, unprecedented action would be taken. all eyes on this. But Gaurav, to flip it over, I want to ask you a few questions because there have been, certain questions that a lot of Indian citizens have, and valid questions that need to be addressed, and the fears allayed. Why, a lot of, citizens thought that we should have gone all the way. We were giving them a befitting response. Why did we stop right now? Why ceasefire when India had the, had the upper hand? The intervention of America. Would you want to, because now the fog of war, literally, it's a conflict but has lifted. Would you want to clarify on these questions that many citizens could have?
So, that's a question that I've put to some of the generals who are actively engaged in getting that message across that terror is no longer a low-cost option for Pakistan. That's point one. Point two, why did we call it off? Look, you heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Bihar after Pahalgam. What did he say? Atank ko uski mitti mein mila denge. Atank will not have any space left wherever it comes from. Point one. Point two, the action that will be taken is unprecedented. Akalpaniya saza to Atank or words to that effect. What did India do? India struck 9 bases in Pakistan, including Muridke, Bahawalpur and Sialkot. That's unprecedented. That's never been done before. Point one. Point two, when Pakistan chose to respond militarily in aid of radical Islamist terror, represented by Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and Hizbul Mujahideen, India, in a graded manner, struck 11 Pakistani Air Force bases, including Sargodha and Jacobabad. This is where Pakistan has the F-16s, and this is where Pakistan, according to information in public domain, has some of its material that can be put together to put together Pakistan's bomb. That bomb that Pakistan has threatened India with since 1998. They would bleed us, Preeti. They would bleed us year after year, decade after decade. And India could not respond effectively, except, of course, in a small manner with a shallow raid in Uri and in a decisive manner, but only one terror camp, which is Jabba Top in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Balakot airstrikes. But after that, this time, Preeti, this is truly unprecedented, not just striking 9 terrorist camps, but targeting 11 military air bases of Pakistan Air Force, including their most fortified air bases, Sargodha, Jacobabad, Noor Khan, Murid, Rafiki. You can't even imagine these bases being targeted. Pakistan could never have imagined these bases being targeted. And what is the signal, Preeti? Once you take those radars out, you're blinding Pakistan. Once you strike in Pakistan's Punjab province, you're striking in the heart of Pakistan's military jihad complex. When you strike at Sindh, the early warning posts, the listening posts, the radar stations, or that Bolari, the latest airfield and airbase, when that is taken down in Sindh, that's in a way for effect that from Skardu in Pakistan-occupied Jammu Kashmir to Bolari in Sindh, no part of Pakistan is safe from an Indian attack. So that message has been conveyed, and the Americans also realize that even American presence in Sargodha cannot save Pakistan from being targeted in Sargodha, nukes or no nukes. So the nuke bluff has been called out. Once message conveyed, operations reduced, curtailed, pause. There's only a pause, Preeti.
Right. Gaurav, I'm just going to get, come back to you. And Sandeep, I just want to quickly introduce Aishwarya, my colleague, as well as Rahul Gautam, who tracks the Congress very closely, because now we'll actually see a bit of political fallout. Till now, you've seen, at least for now, the opposition take a step back and say we are with the armed forces, we are with the government. Now that there is ceasefire, there are certain questions that the opposition is also posing. Aishwarya, word already coming in that the BJP is going to embark starting from tomorrow, what they call a Tiranga Yatra, which of course will culminate in a form of a Vijay Divas like the one in Kargil that India celebrates. So the politics now has already started churning. Till now we'd seen a rest on that.
Well, definitely, Preeti, we will see the Bharatiya Janata Party making sure that they own this, because that is something that was missing at least over the past 48 hours. The Bharatiya Janata Party was giving out a very measured response. It was the defense forces. They were at the forefront. The BJP was, just sort of playing the role of backroom boys. They were quiet about it. We were seeing the kind of meetings that were taking place at Prime Minister's house, but no statement of sorts, nothing official coming in, except for the press conference that happened in the morning today. Apart from that, the BJP was very muted in its response. But today, after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address, we are expecting the BJP to go to all the states, to go to the town and tell the people what exactly has happened, how they have been able to destroy all those places from where terror was, the camps actually, which have now been destroyed, because those were the places, according to BJP, where the training was taking place. So with regards to all that, we will now see the Bharatiya Janata Party going out in full force and claiming the victory, that this is what they have done. They will also say that they have made sure that they avenge the deaths of 26 innocent people. Preeti.
Well, you're right there, because still now you have the BJP also lying low, you have the opposition lying low, led the armed forces, and for a change, it was, it was pleasant and, good to see that the opposition and the government came together. But right now, of course, as ceasefire has been announced, Indian armed forces have done a stellar job, detailed right here by Gaurav and Sandeep. But now you'll see the bit of politics speaking, especially in the manner of which how the ceasefire was announced in the last couple of days. And Rahul Gautam, the Congress already building on that. Questions already being asked on why India heeded to American intervention, number one. Number two, the Congress still firm on a special parliament session to be announced at the back of Operation Sindoor.
Well, Preeti, barring Operation Sindoor, everything is under fire as far as Congress is concerned. Congress is seeking answers as to why Donald Trump, US President, announced the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, why it was not done, on the part of Indian regime, whether this happened at the behest of Pakistan or India, what happened to this reported captured BSF Jawan, why there hasn't been any word on this. Also, Congress is criticizing that the manner in which Prime Minister didn't attend the two all-party meetings that were earlier called on this issue. So clearly, as far as Congress is concerned, it is armed with many issues, and you can expect that they're going to increase the heat. We all know that at around 8 p.m., Prime Minister will be addressing the nation. Congress is anticipating that they'll be getting some answers, they'll be getting some clarity as to what really happened or what really unfolded in past few days, given the fact that they are insisting that there should be an all-party meeting, there should be a special session on this issue. And also remember, Preeti, they are also invoking the legacy of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, saying that, that it's a job half done, and Prime Minister could have achieved what Indira Gandhi had achieved earlier in her regime, but it seemed that the sheer willpower that was shown during Congress regime, it was not displayed by the ruling dispensation. So as far as Congress is concerned, you can expect that they're going to increase the heat, given the fact that they are seeking answers on many issues. They're also declaring this already as a diplomatic failure, saying that no major country came out in support of Indian regime at this critical hour. So clearly, as far as Congress is concerned, expect that they're going to make this a rallying point, bring in more partners, aligned partners, and going to exert pressure on government, and would try to corner the government on this issue, saying that they have completely failed in terms of bringing justice and also teaching lesson to Pakistan on this issue.
Well, this is expected of the opposition. They are going to ask all these questions, and this is the opposition party. While the BJP will now take credit for what has gone down, because viewers, ultimately it is the political will which the armed forces executes, and we've done an exemplary job at that. So the BJP is bound to take credit. The opposition bound to ask questions. They will, of course, give references to Indira Gandhi in 1971, where East Pakistan was concerned, but these are very, very different times. But for the interest of our viewers who have similar questions, I want to go back to Sandeep, and I want to bring Gaurav in, because these are credible questions to think of and, to wonder and ponder upon. Because, Sandeep, I want to bring you in, and maybe we can give some clarity to our viewers. You had just about 3 days ago the Vice President of America, Mr. J.D. Vance, who came and said that, listen, we have nothing to do with this war at all. And then suddenly there was a change in stance where you had the Vice President call up and mediate, with the Prime Minister. Then you had, of course, President Trump tweeting out, and then the ceasefire announced. And in the interim, there were reports which were carried by American media of possible alarming intelligence that they procured. Lots of inferences have been made, and maybe, for the benefit of our viewers, on why suddenly the ceasefire was announced and India submitted to that, even despite having an upper hand, Sandeep, because it seemed India had done the job. Maybe you'd want to tie in Sargodha, Noor Khan, India's attack on that and how important that part played in the decision of India saying, okay, we'll agree to the ceasefire because our message has been delivered.
Well, absolutely, Preeti. You have to look at Pakistan's playbook firstly. From 1986-87, brass tacks, nearly 4 decades ago, to Operation Parakram, and before that, the Kargil War. The Pakistan military always embarks on a rash and an irrational course of behavior. And when that behavior is called out, if there's an Indian military response or a mobilization, or in this case, a strike of the nature that Operation Sindoor was, which we just discussed, unprecedented since 1947, the Pakistani establishment, the military, realized that its one trump card, which is the nuclear weapons, had failed them, because we were undeterred by the prospect of Pakistan waving nuclear weapons in our face and nuclear blackmail. So they immediately dialed the other trump card, which is the United States. In the early 80s, there was that saying about the 3 A's that ran Pakistan: the army, Allah, and America. So the army, in this case, very likely dialed the US for assistance, given the fact that the hammering that their bases had taken, their frontline bases had taken, and the fact that India had demonstrated political will, political resolve to strike despite Pakistan's nuclear weapons, sent shivers down their spine. They called the Americans to try and intervene. And if you see that message by Donald Trump, there were 2 messages. The first one on so-called mediation, and a third location where this would be carried out. There would be talks between India and Pakistan. All of that was, of course, negated by the government of India, saying that, look, there is no ceasefire, that there are no talks between India and Pakistan in a third country, and it is only a ceasefire or a cessation of operations. So there have been multiple clarifications on President Donald Trump's tweets. But I take what the rest of the administration is doing in the United States, and from the signaling that we've seen in the last couple of days in the subcontinent, the fact that Pakistan's military was spooked by the kind of response that Gaurav just mentioned, unprecedented strikes, and the fact that India had achieved what it had set out to do.
Exactly.
We were not planning to denuclearize Pakistan or take out the Pakistan military. Our objectives, our aims were very specific. It was directed at the terror infrastructure. That message was conveyed on day 1 of Operation Sindoor with the 9 strikes. And every time Pakistan tried to escalate, we did escalation dominance. We went up the escalation ladder 1 notch up, and the final act of this escalation dominance was the strike on those 11 Pakistan air bases, those installations, unprecedented again, where we sent a very strong message to the Pakistani military. And this is when they began waving this nuclear SOS, this nuclear flare pistol that they fired at the United States, please come to our rescue. And this is where we are in a grave. And that is how the pattern of American intervention has been in the subcontinent from the 1980s, from brass tacks to the compound crisis of 1990 to the Kargil War of 1999, when Nawaz Sharif rushed to Washington to get a face-saving exit on the 4th of July 1999, when they declared that they would be withdrawing from the Kargil heights. And finally, you had Op Parakram, when it was very close to a conventional battle between India and Pakistan. Pervez Musharraf once again dialed the Americans, and they had to bring in some amount of pressure to avoid a conflict between India and Pakistan. So here, if you look at the statements, Preeti, that came out from J.D. Vance, where he says that, look, we don't have the ability to tell either India or Pakistan to lay down their weapons. We can at best advise them the best course of action. But I think there's been a change after Vance made that statement, because clearly the Pakistanis were spooked, like I said, with the attacks by India on their airfields. They felt that their nuclear weapon trump card had been called out, their nuclear bluff had been called out. So they had no option but to call for the United States to intervene.
Sandeep, because it's important right now, and I want to bring in Gaurav quickly before, of course, we're going to go back to You know, the Prime Minister has made very few statements, very few measured statements. And one, I think, at the back of what Sandeep just said was, Har goli ka jawab ek gola hoga. And that is practically brought about the situation where we stand today, the ceasefire, and how quickly it was brought about. But it's important to detail for our viewers, to tell our viewers as to why exactly did India agree to the ceasefire, because India had clearly made its point. And Gaurav, I want to bring you in once again for a lot of our viewers who continue to ask this question, is attacking the Sargodha air base. The messaging was very clear. We can hit you. If we've hit you at the air base, you know where we can hit you. And that's what spooked the Pakistan army to make that call to the United States of America to immediately intervene. So it's not that India did not, take forward what it had to do, the message it had to deliver. That message was delivered, sealed to Pakistan. Pakistan got spooked, dialed America, and therefore sought the ceasefire.
Preeti, in 2025, India has permanently called off and called out Pakistan's nuclear bogey. The fact that these bases, these 11 bases were targeted, the messaging is very clear that to put your nuclear bomb together, you need to go through a process. India will not permit Pakistan to go through that process. Jacobabad is where they have their F-16s. Jacobabad is where you have American contractors. Sargodha is where you have not just the F-16s, but certain other equipment, material that is required to put together the N-bomb. You also have American contractors there. And yet, India bombed Jacobabad, India bombed Sargodha, India bombed Noor Khan, which is the nuclear command and control structure. The seat of power is Rawalpindi, because boot polish does not matter in Pakistan's scheme of things. The Prime Minister who sits in Islamabad is irrelevant. Wherever you see, what are the delivery platforms? Can it be the F-16s? The F-16s, the bases were taken out. Not just F-16s targeted in hangars, runways taken out. So they can't launch those F-16s. A message sent out, some of the facilities that India knows about, which of course Air Marshal Bharti very aptly said, oh, do you have nukes in Grana Hills? We didn't know that. Area around that targeted to send across the message, we can take you out there. The bases where they have the Mirage 3s and the Mirage 5s, those bases were taken out. Where they have the UAVs and UCAVs, those bases were taken out. Where they have the radars, those bases were taken out. So this war was pursued as military science, and war fighting is an art. If one wave could go out this way, and this was a three-tiered attack. First on terrorists, then on their eyes, and then in their heart and their, body. And point three, in war, this wouldn't have been just these waves. It would have come wave after wave after wave after wave after wave. They wouldn't know what hit them. They wouldn't know how to react. They would have lost their electricity. They would have lost all the power lines. And then there is no way they can take that bomb and, do whatever, whichever chalk they want to put their bombs or whatever drawing room they talk about. They can put whatever they want there. That nuclear bogey has been called out forever. And when military history and books are written, this will be, Operation Sindoor will be one of the finest chapters in India calling out the Pakistani bogey.
So it's important for us. Right now, like I said, there'll be a lot of questions that many of our citizens had, especially at the abruptness of the ceasefire. But understand, 1971 were very different times, very, very different. And India has fought this war diplomatically, stupendously, and with the armed forces. The message was delivered.
Preeti,
it was Pakistan. Yeah,
just,
go ahead.
if you permit, the comparison with 1971 is wonderful, but kind of flawed. In 1971, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, the Iron Lady of India, wanted Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw to go in immediately. He went in after 6 months in December.
Stay with me, Gaurav. Let's quickly cut across to the latest news break coming in. Well, once again, it seems President Trump has spoken on India and Pakistan again. President Trump has told both to stop fighting, told them won't do trade with you. Pressured India, Pakistan for ceasefire. Well, I think this is just Trumpism at its best right now, if you, can actually read the fine print there. Once again, I want to take our viewers through, and I think we also have his reaction coming up. President Trump of the United States of America, we're going to play that out for you in a short while, has spoken, said, I told both nations to stop fighting, told them won't do trade with you. Pressured India, Pakistan for ceasefire. And, Sandeep, I want to bring you in on this. This is Trumpism at its best.
Well, Trump speaks and tweets and posts on any deal that he sniffs And he possibly has seen one here of being the deal maker who's brokered a deal between India and Pakistan. Well, both countries have had their compulsions in doing what they did. And India certainly did. It carried out, as Gaurav said so eloquently, we've pronounced mission accomplished on what we had to achieve. There was nothing more to achieve other than possibly sending the Indian Navy after.
Right.
But you've already achieved majority of your military and political objectives. You've done the signaling.
All right. Sandeep, I'm going to cut you short, and the reason I'm doing so is let's listen in to President Trump and what he had to say a short while back, and we'll try and analyze the messaging behind it.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it, that I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And
that reaction coming in. Okay, let's listen in. I think, okay, that full reaction we're going to try and get in for our viewers. And like I said, that's classic Trumpism, the kind of language where he clearly, and Sandeep and Gaurav, both of you, either of you, if you want to jump in on this. It's interesting because he says that it was trade because that we won't do trade with India or Pakistan. And that was the leverage that led to India and Pakistan stopping. I don't think India was going to stop on the basis of that at all.
So, no, he's saying we stopped a nuclear war, and that was Pakistan's bogey. That was Pakistan's bogey because Pakistan army had so decisively been battered along 11 bases, and they knew, had they tried one more wave of a Pakistani attack, the next wave from the Indian side would have actually decimated all of Pakistan's air bases.
Let's hear it
this
once
side
again,
and that
Gaurav.
side.
Let's listen in to what exactly President Trump said. Let's listen in once again.
on Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it, that I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they...
Important to stress on what the President of the United States said, where he said that these were both two nuclear-capable nations. Gaurav, you want to come in? And they were going at each other hot and heavy. Of course, he said that I tried to use trade to stop. All right, we're getting on the phone line with the very latest. My colleague Shivani Sharma, we're going to go across to her in just a bit. But Gaurav, I think what one needs to underline from what President Trump also said was when he touched on how both nations were nuclearly capable and that were going at each other hot and heavy.
Oh, absolutely. So that's how the Americans got spooked. Their contractors, both at Sargodha and Jacobabad, despite having those American contractors, India went and hit and repeatedly hit. Point one. Point two, America using trade as a weapon. This is, as you very rightly pointed out, Trump's pressure tactics for a trade deal. You know, it's just very clear that he wanted to intervene. He tried between Israel and Hamas. He's failed there. He's tried between Russia and Ukraine. He's failed there. He wants at least one success story. And from what I know, as of now on the LC, there's a pause. There may be a ceasefire. Pakistan's on notice. If there is terror, it is an act of war. There will be consequences for Pakistan, Trump or no Trump.
All right, I want to quickly cut across to my colleague Shivani Sharma, who's also joining us. Sandeep, I'm going to pull you in. Just give me about 2 minutes. Shivani, get us up to speed with the latest news break. You've had President Trump once again speaking on the India-Pakistan conflict. Give us the details.
See, Donald Trump had on 10th also given out a post at around 5:30 declaring the ceasefire, even before India could make an official declaration about it. And that day also he said that after long deliberations between India and Pakistan, we've reached this agreement, and I congratulate both the nations. They are very good countries, and so today once again Donald Trump is speaking, and he's speaking as if he has been the mediator of this whole ceasefire understanding which India has reached. But the reality has been that India has brought Pakistan on its knees with all those strikes, all those damages, the personnel Pakistan lost in different areas of its military installations. So that was the turning point. But here Donald Trump and United States, they want to act as a mediator. They want to show that they have been the mediators. They were the ones who took this initiative ahead. But, you know, we have to wait for the statements from the government. On Saturday also we heard Vikram Misri speaking about the whole process, how it happened, how the DGMO of Pakistan requested India after India had hit the air bases out there and the military installations, and then there was a request which was made. But here again and again Donald Trump and America have been bringing out the issue that they have been mediators, but the picture is something different.
Stay with me, exactly, and stay with me, Shivani, because I want to also bring in Geeta Mohan, our external affairs correspondent editor, who's been tracking the situation very closely. In just about a minute, we're going to cut across to her. But viewers, the latest that is coming in is that President Trump has once again spoken, practically suggesting that it was America that stopped a nuclear conflict. Also, how weaponizing trade, and he's been able to do so, one of the only presidents to do so, is what President Trump said. And he used that as a bargaining tool, as per America, with India and Pakistan. But all of that now warrants an Indian response as well, because Sandeep, politically, where our constituency back home is concerned, there are questions being raised that are we allowing America to meddle a tad too much? And maybe not by the Prime Minister today, this evening, because that's a address to the nation at the back of Operation Sindoor. There should and possibly will be a press conference by the Ministry of External Affairs to actually, speak of what really is going on.
Absolutely, Preeti. And, I tend to agree with what Gaurav said, that when it comes to President Trump, no one seems to be listening to him. He's been 4 months in office and he's not stopped a single conflict. The Russia-Ukraine war continues. The Russians aren't listening to him. Ukrainians certainly aren't listening to him, which he thought they would, given the fact that they were the smaller and the weaker power. But it's not working in Israel and Hamas either. So here you have a golden opportunity where the president sees that where India has already achieved most of its aims and objectives, where he comes in and waves the mission accomplished flag and says that here I got this win, I mediated between these two countries and they've now stopped fighting. It wasn't a war to begin with. It's very important to understand Operation Sindoor is not warfare. It was a series of military strikes to send a very strong message to Pakistan's military that terror has costs. You cannot continue using terrorism as an instrument of state policy and think that it's going to have no costs. We just wanted to raise the costs of terrorism and terror sponsorship of Pakistan. It is, by no means can it be considered warfare, which you can actually bring a truce to or an end to conflict this was an end to a series of strikes where India had already achieved majority of its objectives with Pakistan.
Right.
And it continues to, it reserves the right to respond as and when it chooses to, which is what the reason the Indian Air Force has given for keeping Operation Sindoor an ongoing military operation. And possibly this could be the template for India to handle terror attacks against its citizens or on its soil.
Well, you're right there in a gentle diplomatic reminder, because I think few can forget 7/11 Abbottabad and Osama bin Laden. And I think the president needs to be just possibly reminded of that. That's a side note. I want to quickly bring in to this conversation my colleague Geeta Mohan, our external affairs editor, tracking the details coming in thick and fast. Geeta, President Trump once again taking full credit for ending what he thought was a nuclear conflict, actually suggesting that he is one of the very few who's been able to weaponize trade, and that's what he bargained with India and Pakistan with. Away from what President Trump in America says, Geeta, this will warrant now, maybe not this evening at 8 p.m. by the Prime Minister himself, but this will warrant a proper briefing, by the Ministry of External Affairs to actually lay bare the facts, because for what President Trump seems to be alleging is actually far from the truth that actually transpired.
Well, Preeti, this does require a response from the Indian government as to what really transpired, because this is a huge statement. It is not just about reports coming in of some great intelligence that, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance had on nuclear and Pakistan. That's a separate conversation that Pakistan might have had with the United States of America, but no such conversation happened with India. But over here, to take it further and say that there was an absolute threat, this is a threat he's talking about. He threatened India and Pakistan that there's going to be no trade unless and until the two sides de-escalate and reach to a position of mutual understanding to stop fire, which is a ceasefire. But then again, the first hints of this came from Secretary Lutnick, who had hinted just a day ago that trade talks with India could be delayed because of the ongoing situation. So yes, there is the Washington DC has in a way tried to now build a narrative which is that the US very firmly spoke not just on nuclear aspects but also on trade. But let me clarify a few things over here. The clincher, Preeti, was on the 10th of May when the leadership calls with Rubio didn't really work with Pakistan. Civilian dispensation really does not matter. The clincher was when Asim Munir and Rubio spoke, and Asim Munir, the Pakistani army chief, told Rubio that he wants the firing to stop. Rubio then called Dr. Jaishankar and informed Dr. Jaishankar that he's calling not to discuss mediation or off-ramp conversations, which is de-escalatory talks. He very specifically is calling to inform India that Asim Munir has requested the firing to stop. And that's when the DGMO level talks took place. To a question on whether if there was any conversation on nuclear, India made it very clear that there was no conversation with India. However, we do know that, Pakistan does play the nuclear bogey. And cries to America every time they're in trouble. And they did that because we saw all the ministers started speaking about nuclear, and then the whole information or statements about their nuclear base being attacked, so on and so forth. So, and the great intelligence that certain leadership, including Vice President Vance, got on nuclear. So this might have been a conversation between Pakistan and the United States of America. Having said that, this is not just a statement about nuclear that Donald Trump has made. So the Indian government will have to now respond as to whether there was a specific conversation on trade as well. That's a major statement coming in from Donald Trump.
I want to bring in Gaurav as well, but I want to ask you first, and maybe then Gaurav can reflect on it, that in diplomacy, a lot of conversations are not really spoken of. The kind of posturing that we are seeing, the narrative building that we are seeing from America under President Trump is new. That would require possibly, a tightrope diplomatic walk by India, but at the same time being very assertive and firm where India has stood. Are we looking at a decisive response from India coming in at this point of time?
Well, look at the larger picture. A trade talk between India and the United States of America does not just benefit India. It benefits the United States of America as well, Preeti. At a time when they're having a very difficult relationship with China, the only alternative is India. So threatening India will certainly not help Washington, D.C. And India, while there might be a lot of narrative building, while there might be a lot of conversation that might have taken place, but there's one thing that India is quite certain of, which we've been speaking to officials and they've said, is that this time around, they were not threatened or pressured by anybody. They were not taking that. Whether it is Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, the United Nations, the United States of America, they received calls from everybody. The simple message was that it is not for us to decide. It is for Pakistan to decide whether they're going to stop firing or not. Should they continue, we will continue. So the pressure tactics or being threatened is something, again, you know, it's Trump's word against India's word. So we'll have to wait and see what the Indian government's response is.
Okay, we need to listen in to what President Trump said. And Gaurav, then I'm going to bring you in because I think America, just for the sheer fact of equating India and Pakistan in the same breath, needs to be gently reminded of Abbottabad and 7/11. But let's listen into what President Trump said.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And
I want to quickly introduce our consulting editor, Rajdeep Sardesai, in this conversation. Rajdeep, one quick word. You have the kind of narrative building by America. I think there needs to be a gentle reminder there of 7/11, Abbottabad, to try and equate India and Pakistan in the same term. And then also taking credit for what President Trump seems to suggest, stopping a nuclear conflict.
Look, you're dealing with a US president who doesn't follow any rules and processes. So I think we've got to keep that in mind. And here is a classic disruptor above all else. He doesn't follow what you would expect in the traditional rules of diplomacy. All these announcements should be made through a particular diplomatic channel. That's the way it's done. But Donald Trump doesn't believe in that. You know, he only believes in Donald Trump. And that's the way he's expressed himself. You remember in his first statement, he spoke of or yesterday, spoke of a 1,000-year conflict over Kashmir. I mean, that's bollocks. I mean, someone needs to give the US president a history lesson. So I think Donald Trump is doing this in a way to establish his own, you know, he wants to be seen as someone who can solve the disputes of the world. Then whether it's Russia and Ukraine, you saw what he did with Zelensky when Zelensky came into the Oval Office. You've seen the way he's responded to Mexico, to Canada, the way he initially dealt with Britain, the way he's dealt with the Germans. This is not someone who follows the code of diplomacy. And but there's a method in the madness. Let's be very clear. Donald Trump is doing this in a way to shore up his own image.
True.
Even if it means he embarrasses India and Pakistan in the process. Imagine what he's done now. He's virtually saying India and Pakistan under my pressure, and he's equating the two.
True.
You see, we always wanted to de-hyphenate India from Pakistan. That was what we'd managed to successfully do in the last decade. He's brought us back to a situation where he's talking about India and Pakistan in the same breath all the time. Even yesterday he said two great nations, and today he says trade deals will be done with both. I mean, why should we be equated with Pakistan? I think he has, in his own bizarre way, if I may say so, embarrassed us. and done it just before the Prime Minister is to speak?
Well, and this also warrants a response by India, and if not at the Prime Minister's speech, and we're counting down to it, because like I said, we've heard enough propaganda coming in from Pakistan, where practically on a daily level you had the Prime Minister of Pakistan address the nation. Our Prime Minister hasn't done so. This is the first address to the nation that Prime Minister Modi would be giving in just about 10 minutes from now. Will he touch on what clearly is American intervention, or will we wait and let the Ministry of External Affairs deliver that message clear, as Geeta was pointing out? Because this warrants a straight, tough response from India, setting it clear on where India stands, and maybe ask America to step back. With that, I'm going to go into a quick break. To stay with us, viewers, we are counting down just in the next 10 minutes from now, address to the nation. All right, we're going to stay right here. We're not getting into a break as we count down to the Prime Minister's address to the nation at 8 p.m. Gaurav and Sandeep, I want to bring you in with what Rajdeep also touched on, and now focusing on the Prime Minister's speech. Gaurav, would you reckon that he's going to touch on what intervention by America, taking credit, trying to equate both Pakistan and India, or he's going to be more focused on what a spectacular Operation Sindoor the Indian armed forces ran? Because ultimately, like I pointed out earlier, the armed forces is only the forward march of what is political will of a country.
And the political will of the country, as you very rightly point out, Preeti, has been displayed in the manner in which India sorted Pakistan out. First, Pakistani terror, and then Pakistani military bases, and then it's the Americans who got spooked. It may be Donald Trump who got spooked, or J.D. Vance who got spooked about Pakistanis using nukes because of American contractors on ground, as some of the reports seem to indicate. But is he equating India and Pakistan? He may choose to, but does that mean India and Pakistan are on the same page? No, they are not. India is on our way to becoming the third largest economy of the world. Pakistan is a basket case. And, only the uninitiated would equate the two. India is a very powerful military power, as we have shown. Pakistan is not. India is a very powerful economy, as we see. Pakistan is not. Pakistan begs for its next meal. And India is systematically degrading Pakistan's ability to wage war, either using terror or their armed forces. Because with this $1 billion or two that they get, will they feed their people or will they buy more weapons? That's a question that Pakistan needs to answer. So there is no question, unless you are weak in your own mind or there are politics involved in being equated with Pakistan. That's very clear. And perhaps that's exactly what India intends to do, continue to rise on top as Pakistan continues to fall. Will the Western powers try and equate? Yes, they will, because they do not want to see a very strong India. They want India to remain the vassal state that it was seen to be at one point of time, to just obey their commands. America says, because of our interests in Afghanistan, don't do this, don't answer terror, don't respond to terror. And we say, yes sir, 3 bags full, sir. That's clearly not happening in today's day and age. And that is what even irks the United States of America. If this is pressure tactics for a trade deal, as Geeta was very rightly pointing out, America needs the trade deal as much, if not more, or unless they want to, show India in poor light and make China powerful, which will sort the Americans out in some years from now. So that is real geopolitics in the world that all of us can see very clearly.
And Sandeep, would you want to reflect on that? Because it would seem that in all probability, the Prime Minister is going to steer clear of America's role in all of this. He's going to leave it for the Ministry of External Affairs to give out a befitting response and hopefully, in a press conference very soon, making India stand clear. The Prime Minister today, Sandeep, in all probability, hailing the Indian Armed Forces action where Operation Sindoor is concerned, because he had promised the country that it would be exceptional, never seen before action. Number two, also pay tribute to the fallen lives that were killed with Pakistan this time. We've lost civilians, we've lost our men, who've fallen in the line of duty, and we don't carry that weight of grief lightly.
Absolutely, Preeti. And I think, India has to deal with WMDs of two kinds. One is, of course, the weapons of mass destruction that Pakistan has kept in its backyard and reared terrorists under the WMDs to use nuclear weapons, enable terrorism against us. And the other WMD is our strategic partner, the United States, which has weapons of mass distraction, as I would call President Trump's statements and tweets and posts. So these are the two WMDs that the government of India has to deal with. One WMD it's dealt with. I think the Prime Minister is going to steer clear of President Trump's statements, and he's going to stick to the line, the political signaling from Operation Sindoor. You heard a fantastic exposition of the military aspects of this operation yesterday from the 3 DGMOs. They gave you in very great detail all the targets that were hit, why they were struck, the 3 phases of Operation Sindoor. Prime Minister Modi is going to give you the big picture of the political messaging from Operation Sindoor, why they struck Pakistan, what the new red lines are. And I'd like to hear him talk more about this act of terror equals to an act of war, and whether the armed forces are going to be empowered to strike on terrorism and what that matrix is going to look like. So I think he's going to steer clear of everything. He doesn't want a controversy at this moment, and certainly not with President Trump's statements or tweets, because as Rajdeep was saying, and I was saying earlier, that President Trump is desperate to be the peacemaker, the deal broker. Nobody is listening to him, unfortunately. He's been in office for nearly 4 months. He's not been able to stop a single war. He promised Russia, Ukraine. No one's listening to him. You know, the Israel-Hamas, that is going on indefinitely. And, you know, and this point that Rajdeep made about hyphenation, I just want to quickly add to that. Equating, referring to India and Pakistan in the same breath does not amount to hyphenating them. Certainly it doesn't, because when you talk about Russia and Ukraine, you're not putting them in the same, you're not hyphenating Russia with Ukraine. You're talking of them because they are 2 partners, they're 2 adversaries in a conflict. And here it seems President Trump seems to believe that India and Pakistan are in this 1,000-year conflict. I'm not sure where he got that number from. It's possibly from Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's statements on the 1960s, where he promised a 1,000-year war with India. But, you know, Trump is clearly off the mark here. And the short answer is, I think the Prime Minister is going to steer very, very far away from any of these statements. He doesn't want to get into controversies at this point.
That's what I think we are expecting. The Prime Minister is not going to touch on America or the role that America seems to suggest that it has played. He's going to leave it to the Ministry of External Affairs. I want to bring in Rajdeep Sardesai very quickly right now, because another 5 minutes we're going to hear the Prime Minister. Rajdeep, if for the citizens of India, what is it that they want to hear? There are certain questions, plausible questions, that a lot of Indians have in their mind, that despite of India having an upper hand, why is it that we agreed to this ceasefire? A lot of that has been laid to rest by detailing of what the DGMO said today. Gaurav and Sandeep have elucidated in detail on why Pakistan got spooked. But what do you think should be the address to the nation? Because, these are unprecedented times. The speech is coming at a highly unprecedented time.
Look, I think it's very important that the Prime Minister speaks to the nation. Mr. Modi has done that very effectively, if you see, even in the past, whether it's been particularly during the COVID lockdowns, where he spoke more than once to the nation. I think he is able to thereby communicate a sense of leadership, of leading from the front. And you will recall there was even a controversy when the Congress social media cell had put up an ad virtually suggesting where is the Prime Minister is missing in action. Well, I think one has to be fair to Prime Minister Modi at times like this. I do believe that in this instance, by speaking to the nation, he has to take the nation into confidence over what's been a pretty crazy time over the last 20 days. I mean, it's exactly what, 20 days, just under 3 weeks since that horrific massacre took place in Baisaran. And since then, the country has been pushed to the edge of a major conflict with Pakistan. And I think what the nation is looking today from the Prime Minister, above all else, Preeti, is a sense of reassurance that India is secure. Our armed forces have done a commendable job. We don't want to be, to use the Prime Minister's own words, be in an era of war, but we will defend our national interests. This is a war against terror, not against any specific country. That's what I expect the Prime Minister to say. And at the same time, give a sense of where we go from here. I think Indians are looking at the moment for a sense of reassurance as to where do we go from here. So, Pakistan se goli chalegi, to hamare yahan se gola chalega. All of that is, I believe, designed for, let's say, those who sit in the front benches, the stalls. But I think people who are beyond just the just those who are itching for a conflict also need to be reassured that India as a major economic power is not just going to get into a conflict with Pakistan. We want to move beyond that. So I expect Mr. Modi to play that role today. He does that effectively, as we've seen. One of his strengths is he is able to directly communicate to the people of this country. Whether it's his Man Ki Baat or
Right.
whether it is his addresses to the nation, he's been able to do that. And I look forward to listening to the Prime Minister. Ironically,
Right.
just as an aside, I remember when he spoke to the nation on demonetization, we all thought he was going to speak on an indo-pak conflict at the time. Now that was 8 years ago. 8 years later, today finally, that was 2016. Now in 2025, the Prime Minister is going to speak to us presumably on India-Pakistan.